Podcast New York.
What's up, Dueling Decades? This is Wax. Peace to all you guys, and thanks for having me on the show. Will it be the 90s or the 80s? Beanie Babies or Crack Babies? Will it be Nirvana or Madonna? Maybe Britney, maybe Whitney. Do you like new metal or new wave? Dave Grohl or Super Dave? I don't know. But now the battle begins. Dueling Decades. Let's see who wins.
Dueling Decades.
All right, Man Crush. Well, you pick up the first point in this game. You take control of the board. What category are we going with next, man?
Man, this is tough. Mid-90s. Let's go. Fuck it. Let's just go movies. We'll go movies here. May 12th, 1995. And, 26 years ago today, this Tony Scott, Jerry Bruckheimer classic was released to theaters. And if you go over to our Facebook every single day, www.facebook.com/Dueling Decades, we release movies that came out in the 80s and 90s are all in one post. Usually we cherry pick the six that we like, and we put them up there. And this movie was actually on that list today. So coincidentally, this is one of those movies though where the movie was a monster hit when it came out, and nowadays we don't really hear much about it. We talked about this on the show before. This movie, I think they played on TBS or TNT a lot. So I think that's the only time I ever hear about it. But it always fascinates me with movies like these. They're huge hits, big time money makers at the time. And then they just kind of like fade out over time. And in spite of that, like I initially had like a little bit of apprehension with this pick because I didn't think I would like this movie because I didn't even remember much of it anymore. Is it dated? Was it big for the moment in time and now nobody cares? Like, I honestly don't know the reason why this happened. So I figured I'll watch the movie, and if it doesn't hold up, I'll just find something else. So once again, I have 2,000 movies, and this is not one of the movies I own. So I ended up renting this movie on Amazon last night for $3.99, which my wife always loves. But I loved it. So with that said, I'm actually really perplexed why this occurs. Maybe you guys don't feel the same way. Let's see how it goes with this movie. At the box office, this one brought in $157 million in 1995. That's about $275 million in 2021. So pretty good for a remnant Cold War movie. Obviously, we're a little bit outside the Cold War, but they're still bringing it back in. The film was nominated for 3 Oscars in pretty much the most popular categories. And of course, I'm talking about best sound, best film editing, and best sound effects and editing. Mark's nodding like I'm being serious right now.
No, editing is always important.
But I mean, obviously,
screw best actor or actress. No, I want best editor.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a dynamo here when you have the 3 of those. But I mean, all kidding aside, I'm actually shocked that the 2 co-stars this one didn't get any Oscar buzz for their performances. You put Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington on the same screen, it's literally a slam dunk in any movie. This movie could have been about 2 landscapers, and those 2 would have been in it, and you would have been like, oh, this fucking movie's the bomb. I'd watch this again and again. That said, they actually offered, before Gene Hackman got this role, they offered his role to Tommy Lee Jones, but he turned it down. But I think that's good, though, because who wanted to see Tommy on another Navy ship?
Another ship.
Yeah. Dude, you just did Under Siege.
Yeah.
Whatever. I think we're good here. So if you're into tense movies, water sports, or more accurately, tactical underwater maneuvers, I think they would call it, Cold War hangovers, angry extremists, Quentin Tarantino dialogue changes, which actually happens in this one, personality clashes, the importance of chain of command, Jack Russell's, double mutinies, because now you didn't get 1 mutiny, you got 2 mutinies, you got Mexican standoffs, and an argument that lasts the entire movie about a Le Panzer Stallion. Then go out and rent yourself a copy of Crimson Tide. And here's a little factoid that you could take to the bar with you when you're trying to hook up with somebody and you start talking about Crimson Tide, because that happens all the time, right? Le Panzer Stallions, they're in fact Slovenian. So both the guys in this movie are completely wrong. So thank you, Google. In 1995, obviously, these guys could look that up. I could. But yeah, Crimson Tide.
Wow, not even out of the second round, and we've already brought up Vagisil and Crimson Tide. Fantastic.
And look, is it Lepenzer or Lepanzer Stallions? It's fucking horses.
I don't know. All right, Drew Zach.
And two movies with a dynamo in them.
This is true.
There you go.
It's true.
True. All right, Drew Zachman, what did you bring for the movies round?
Yeah, Crimson Tide is definitely a panty dropper. You know, when you're out at a bar, you got to throw that out there. I mean, skip the conversation, be like, "You like Crimson Tide?" And she's like, "You're in, dude." You're so
It's
in.
straight Spanish Fly.
Oh yeah. All right, so for mine, I could not find any releases between May 9th and May 15th of 1976. However, Mark, I believe you also were frequenting this newspaper earlier, but I pulled up the movie calendar, and one of my favorite newspapers, the Baltimore Sun, and I'm not joking, I like the Baltimore Sun, and several theaters, such as Campus Hill Cinema 2, not 1, 2, Church Lane Cinema, and Glen Burnie Mall, just to name a few. There were several others. They were playing one movie and one movie only, and that movie boasted 93 cars destroyed in the most incredible chase ever filmed. This movie actually came out in July of 74 and actually had 127 cars getting destroyed throughout the film. Now, the movie was written by, produced by, directed by, and starred the same person, H.B. Halicki. Now, if you're not sure what film I'm talking about, perhaps this tagline will give it away. You can lock your car, but if he wants it, it's gone in 60 seconds. So that's what I'm talking about. And interestingly enough, I started digging into Halicki. It sounds interesting that this guy did like everything by himself. Turns out the guy married Denise Shakarian just before filming the 1989 sequel, Gone in 60 Seconds 2, where they would wind up both starring in that. Halicki, who was also a stuntman, was tragically killed during the filming of the sequel. But after his death, Shakarian began dating, and I think was even engaged to some fancy lawyer named Robert Kardashian, who raised some of the dumbest dipshits in the world. And speaking of car chases, Robert Kardashian represented some guy who was in probably the most infamous car chase ever, albeit they were going to posted speed limits, if not a little bit slower, but still. And Robert and Denise were third cousins, so yuck. But yeah, eventually this flick would spawn a 2000 remake with Mr. Nicolas Cage, and is actually one of the best movies ever made, and I don't care what anybody says. So I'm going with Gone in 60 Seconds, as it was in movie theaters during that time.
Wow, so there was not one movie that was released during that week. Wow.
No. And I checked a couple spots. I couldn't find anything that was released because, like, sometimes like the dates online might be off by a couple days, and so I went into like each of those movies. I went on IMDb, Wikipedia. I went to like a couple different spots, and I couldn't find anything that was, which is weird because like it's May, you know, like it's summertime. You figure they'd be having some movies come out, but
did you go to newspapers.com?
Well, yeah, that's where I found the Baltimore Sun.
Wow, and there was man, if it went to that point, I probably would have found a porn that was released.
No, I didn't research those.
But how do you pick?
Oh, dude, you just go with like, remember, it was last year. I forgot what I had. I think it was the 70s as well. It was when Jamie Kennedy was on, and it was a worst of episode. And I went with some porno. There was about some chick that killed herself at the end. It was like,
Oh my God.
what's worse than that?
Yeah,
I think I won that round too. I forgot what it was called.
Are you kink shaming?
I actually watched it for research.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, if you're talking about porn, I had no idea who this Denise Shakarian is. Just Google her, and she probably would be in a porn based on the pictures I saw. So
I thought you were going to say she got married to Nicolas Cage. I thought that's where your head.
That's where I thought you were going too.
Yeah.
probably. I mean, he's been married once or 17 times, so who knows? But she was actually involved in the 2000 remake. So there you go.
All right, guys. So for my movie selection, we're going to go to May 13th, 1988. And we get the release of a movie that the favorably mentioned in the last episode, Bruce Campbell, has gone on to admit that he only did this movie because he needed the money. And it's the least favorite of every film that he's ever done. So we're going to go over to the Daily News, May 18th, 1988, where the headline reads, bodies to the left of us, bodies to the right. You have the right to remain violent in Maniac Cop. A prolific movie maverick Larry Cohen again displays his patent flair for taking the simple but solid premise and cleverly exploiting every story hook and with it style. The premise here involves a mysterious killer cop played by the hulking Robert Zadar. I don't know if I've ever heard Robert Zadar described as hulking before, but
He's hulking in that movie. Did you see the shower scene?
yeah, I don't know.
I feel like that word should be used more, by the way, like in our regular vernacular. I feel like we gotta start throwing that around more.
Go ahead.
So the hulking Robert Zadar is rapidly reducing Gotham's law-abiding population via his nocturnal slaughter habits. So frightened citizens respond by killing innocent cops while, Maniac Cop is out there on the loose on a killing spree. The result boasts in a higher body count than the latest Friday the 13th movie, which was also released at the same time and was in the theaters. So, of course, naturally, I had to go with the one that has the highest body count. So I went with Maniac Cop. Despite the modest budget and occasionally slapdish direction of genre flicks currently unspooling, Maniac Cop ranks among New York's finest, the review says. Now, the modest budget they talk about was about $1.1 million. Now, it grossed just over half of that. But again, this is one of those movies that found its legs in the aftermarket, on cable, on TV, in the drive-ins, and in VHS rental stores. So that's what I got for my movie selection. May 13th, 1988. It's Maniac Cop.
Takes a maniac to catch a maniac.
I totally forgot Bruce Campbell is in that. The only scene I remember with him, isn't he like cheating on his wife or something with another cop in a hotel or something like that?
Yeah, that's like the whole premise. He's cheating on his wife. His wife finds out about it and then gets killed by Maniac Cop. So of course he wants to avenge his wife's death. So it's fantastic.
It's a great flick.
All right, let's go down to Judge Mike Henneberger for the ruling on the movies round.
This one was a little kind of easy for me. And Crimson Tide is a film that, I watch with my dad and my father-in-law. That's kind of what, those movies remind me of. Although, I'm a big military and history buff, so I'm still interested in that stuff, but not at all interested in the importance of chain of command, military or otherwise. It's probably why I didn't do well in the military, or with my dad, who was 20 years Navy. Maybe there's just a lot of stuff I need to unpack when it comes to those kinds of movies.
Your next book.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sorry, I should be more familiar with Maniac Cop. I know of it. I have not seen it, so I can't pick Maniac Cop. And Drew, you don't got to defend yourself. I think Gone in 60 Seconds is one of the best movies ever. So I got to go with Gone in 60 Seconds because it gave us the reboot of Gone in 60 Seconds.
It had legs.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not allowed to use it, you chastising son of a bitch.